Yeah. So let me just introduce the show.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay, this is the first episode of the Aware Athlete Show. The Aware Athlete, connecting to the life you want. The show is about being an aware athlete, which by definition of the original word athlete is someone who is seeking for, someone who also is striving for a prize. That prize is one of great personal value, and it's obtained through self-awareness and through awareness of and connection to the world around you. So in the show, we intend to investigate the details of how you seek your greatest value through personal stories and conversations. And the hope is that our aim for each show is that you come away with useful insights that you can use in seeking your own purpose and value. So before we get started today, I'm going to mention Luna sandals, my favorite go-to running, trail running, hiking, and backpacking shoe. With Luna sandals, you don't have to worry about blisters, black toes, cramped toes, and you can easily walk through any stream you want without worrying about wet shoes. A favorite of mine. So if you have ever considered going outdoors in minimalist footwear, I would urge you to give Luna sandals a try. To see a demonstration of Luna sandals, go to awareathlete.com/store. So now I'm really pleased to be able to introduce our guest today, Duncan Cheung. And Duncan is a graduate of the Harvard School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. He's also the executive director of a company named Off Trail, On Track. And I'm thinking, from what I know so far, that the off-track part, or excuse me, the off-trail part is not entirely metaphorical. I think that Duncan actually gets you off the trail.
Yeah.
So we're going to find out about that. And so our hope is that these shows will have something valuable for everyone. And Duncan says that he has established Off Trail On Track for three purposes. And one is to help humans connect with themselves, one another, and nature. And number two is to direct attention and resources toward wilderness conservation, diversity, and education. And number three, in case you're not a backpacker and wonder what might be in this for you, to inspire us to apply a minimalist mindset to our lives to create abundance. So this talk will be a great help to you, no matter who you are, in learning to focus on the things that are most important to you. So without further words, I would like to say that I'm very pleased and honored to have Duncan Cheung here today. And Duncan, say hello.
Hi, Scott. It's an honor to be invited to be a guest on your show. I'm very pleased to be able to speak with you over the past couple of months. I think we're kindred spirits in both in terms of our pursuits in the outdoors, in our sort of physical pursuits, as well as a mental pursuit. I am a fan of your work, the Aware Athlete's work. And so I'm very pleased to be part of this interview series.
All right. Very good. So could you tell everybody who's listening, I'm sure you have a background over quite a number of years before you founded your company. So what are the steps that you went through, the life experiences, the defining moments that got you to found Off Trail On Track?
Yeah, sure, happy to. And let me summarize my life in 30 seconds or less if it's possible.
Okay.
So I was born and raised in Hong Kong, China. And even as a little kid, oh, actually, I have that rock here. I was fascinated by rocks and minerals and dinosaurs. My mom, when I was a very young kid, I think I was 6 years old, my mom introduced me to, what was it? The Neverland, about the dinosaurs, that cartoon.
Oh,
And I was fascinated by dinosaurs and rocks and fossils. And so that really jump-started my interest in geology and environmental science. And so there wasn't resources in Hong Kong that allowed me to pursue a career or a passion in environmental science. And so I had to find other ways. And fortunate, I feel very fortunate that my parents were able to support me through an education overseas in the US. And so that's my background in environmental science. And then later on in my graduate studies at the Yale School of Forestry and Environmental Studies, the pursuit of how this all applies in the corporate world. So I studied corporate environmental management. And I was, and then, fast forward, a lot of my experiences have been off trail, metaphorically and also in reality, because I know that in order to pursue something like this as a person from Hong Kong, China, it's quite rare, and it's not really a charted path. In Hong Kong, the three dominant professions would be, you're either a doctor, you're an accountant, you're an attorney, or you're in the tourism business, or you're a real estate mogul, which are great ways to make money. But to me, I think there's always been a seed in me to seek wealth in a different way, and seek wealth of the heart and seek fulfillment. And now I think more and more so, I find that to be true and resonant in my own life. And so I took my expertise and my learnings from school, from work, and by the way, I used to be a corporate strategy and management consultant specializing in environmental sustainability. So basically helping big companies go green and green ones get bigger. And what that taught me was that there needs to be some alignment of individual pursuits of fulfillment and happiness, linking that with the intrinsic value of nature, and creating a world that allows us to be sustainable as a species. And a lot of that work, yes, it has to do with corporations. Yes, it has to do with regulations and the public sector and the nonprofit sector. But ultimately, what I've learned over the past 20 some years or so is that throughout this sort of first part of my career, this 20-year of my career, it's really about the mindset, and it really is about changing here, so that we can go and manifest what we believe in. And that's why I founded Off Trail On Track as a way to inspire people to get outdoors. Yeah, it's about smarter, lighter, easier backpacking, sure. But that's an excuse, and the secret's out. That's an excuse for us to get deeper, and deeper. What I mean is in here, and also deeper in nature. Sorry, that was a lot longer than 30 seconds, but that gives you a sense of why this whole process and this journey started.
Yeah. So you seem to have been on a somewhat linear path, knowing from an early age kind of the direction you wanted to go. Would you say that's true or not?
Yes, absolutely. And it wouldn't be a traditional path, I would say, in sort of any measure. I would say growing up in Hong Kong, and then attending, to be fortunate enough to attend a university here, and then pursue my continued learning by working in a nonprofit and also government setting in China to help build a design a self-sustaining model village in Chengdu, where all the spicy food comes from. That province, Sichuan province, where all the good, yummy, spicy food comes from, and teaching them how to do biodynamic organic farming, how to do cleaning toilets, and how to use microbes to grow fungus, and sell it, and connecting that with the local commerce, the hotels and hot pot restaurants. That gave me a lot of learning on on how to then marry the two, the care for nature and ourselves, as well as the care for our individual well-being, that those two need to be integrated in order for us to have a sustainable world. To just focus on, environmental activism, that's not going to work. To just focus on individual profit, that's not going to work. How do you then find the balance and find where the points of integration? That's where I think where I think long-term prosperity for all, not just for individuals. And I'm not talking about the sort of the capitalist means of prosperity. I'm talking about prosperity in terms of our richness in life and how we find fulfillment.
Right, right. So, yeah, you've used the word integration there, and you've touched on 2 or 3 areas that need to be integrated. Yeah. And so the first one might be integrating nature with your purpose in life.
Yes.
In other words, a lot of people may or may not think that we need to take care of nature, but they wouldn't see the connection between that and taking care of yourself and taking care of the others in society, or taking care of our future. So can you? I'm 100% behind that. But can you comment any more on exactly what the connection is between?
Sure. Yeah, I'll tell you the story.
between nature and your own life, not you personally, but everyone's life.
Right. Well, I can't talk to everyone else's lives, but I can share with you what I've learned.
In a universal sense. Yeah.
What I've learned from my students and from the participants in these, what I call mind shift adventures, and some of these trips that I guide and teach, yes, there are minimalist backpacking trips going to some of the most beautiful world-class wilderness areas. And I purposely integrate some of these trips with yoga and with meditation. And I co-guide with some of the best yogis out here. And what I've learned in these trips, so I'm actually, after we jump off this interview, I'm going to guide another yoga plus minimalist backpacking trip. And 2 weeks ago, I just guided another one that's also with 7 really great yogis. And I'll tell you the story. When you ask the question of how do we actually integrate the care for nature and the care for ourselves. 2 weeks ago, we went on this trip, and I'll show you some photos as we go, actually, to make it come alive. We were deep in the wilderness. Are you seeing my screen now?
Yeah, I see your screen very well, yeah.
Right, wonderful. So this is, let's see, yeah, so these are photos from about 2 weeks ago. We went into the wilderness, and in a very sort of minimalist way, we carried exactly what we needed. And we carried our necessities as opposed to our insecurities. And we did yoga, we hiked, and we talked throughout this whole trip. The common thread was the Taoist philosophy of non-action. How do we seek the path of least resistance? Nature does it. And when we do it, when we practice it, we flow with nature. And that's one core philosophy that I really believe in, is that forcing things to happen is a very artificial approach, and allowing nature to take us and following the path of nature of least resistance, and enabling others to bask in this beautiful scenery, as well as an opportunity to go deeper inside ourselves, to reflect on what we actually really need and what we're looking for. Those are moments that I think inspire to understand how we are actually connected to the world around us. It's by critically examining and re-examining our own needs, not just what's carried on these backpacks. Right? It's not just about, oh, do we need a shelter? Do we need a sleeping bag? Yes, we do. But by examining what we actually need on our backs, we're also examining what we need here. And that's the connection here. This is the physical world, what we carry, and this is the mental world of what we carry.
Yeah.
How do we shed a lot of that burden? How do we shed the fears and the insecurities to get to a place where we understand that the world is actually abundant. It's our minds that are creating scarcity. And once we realize that we have so much to give and the world has so much to give.
Yeah. So you've covered so much there. So what I find is that I love going outdoors. I think it's very beneficial. It's beautiful. And but I find that you talk about integration. I find that the moments that I have during the day are the same moments I have when I'm out backpacking.
Oh, interesting.
It's the same. It's the same thing. Staying, it's a buzzword, but centered or grounded, or having a strong neutral from which to act from. It's the same when I'm at work or when I'm out in nature. Nature will teach you to flow with what actually exists, like you said. You have to.
Yeah.
You're going to walk up a hill all day. Pretty soon you're going to learn to keep the rhythm of what can be sustained.
Right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I find myself learning some of the same things in nature, but in a wonderful way that I could learn in any moment, in any day. So there's a terrific integration of nature and life, but nature is a fundamental teacher, it seems like.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely.
Because you do shed the artificial when you get out there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you don't have anybody looking over your shoulder and no time clock to punch, and the only rules are being aware of what really exists.
Right. Yeah. And it allows us to be human beings as opposed to human doings. I think we focus so much, especially in this day and age where things are moving faster. Yeah, innovation has been happening since the dawn of humankind. But what's different today compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 40 years ago, is that the pace of change has really accelerated to a point where we're just getting whiplash. Like, information overload. There is so much out there. We don't know what is fake news. We don't know what is fact, and we don't have time to decipher all of this. And there's just so much constantly coming at us. And what I find, and I think this is the point that you're getting at, which is that being able to disconnect from the artificial world, the world that we created for ourselves, is actually a good way for us to reconnect to what we believe in and what we're made of in nature. And that gives us an opportunity to learn. I don't nature, tries to teach us anything. I don't think, and in fact, if I translate that to my own role in the wilderness, I call myself a backpacking teacher or an instructor or a guide, but the secret is I'm no teacher. What I am doing here is just to create a safe enough space and to create a space where people can feel safe and challenged to learn on their own. And that's my role. And that's how I see myself on these trips. And to allow people to explore and to connect with nature and to reconnect to the source, much more so than they perhaps are able to in the city or in their daily lives. Yeah, the source. We are, but we've forgotten, but we are biological creatures. Well said. Well said. We often see that nature or the environment as a resource, as something that we can exploit or extract or to get from. But in addition to being a resource, it's also the source where we came from. And it is to be experienced, to be revered even, and to be integrated with us. And I've had so many, this all sounds very new agey and proof. I'm not the kind of guy who goes out there and lights a candle and be this very cliche new agey guy wearing this long garb. But there's something there that I think has worth, which is that to understand the deeper connection to nature is a way for us to explore. And I think
Yeah.
that's what humans are meant to do. We've traveled great distances from
Yes.
our initial departure from the continent of Africa, and we've explored, we've walked. We are creatures who are curious. We're creatures who are social. And now we're looking at screens, and how, let's take that away for a moment, and let's have a conversation. Let's breathe the same air, and let's go out there and explore and walk.
Yeah. So absolutely. So what you said about just providing a space for people to learn, it reminds me of a rather well-known quote by someone I'm familiar with, Dr. Moshe Feldenkrais.
Mm-hmm.
He, at one of his trainings, he said, I will be the last teacher you will ever have. Not because I am your best teacher, but because I will teach you how to learn. I will teach you to learn how to learn.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and what you're saying there, getting back to the source, and I think you said this somehow, but well, you said it in what we're talking about right now, giving people an opportunity to learn, which is actually allowing them to find strength within themselves. And that kind of strength that you have when you look within yourself and you say, I have to find it myself, that's self-discovery. But it's the kind of strength that doesn't preclude being mentored, being coachable, learning from others. It doesn't do that, but the source, maturity, I think, is really based on how can you look within yourself and find the answers. Have you learned that they're there?
Ooh, okay, that's quotable. Can I use that? I'll quote you.
Right. Sure.
Well,
yeah. So off trail, on track is meant to be a movement. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
And so can you talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. Foundationally, in the mountains, it's a quite a simple analogy. It's that not following a pre-established trail. Trails have their value, and they enable access to a lot of people. But blindly following a trail and not doing the learning and not doing the actual walking, actual discovery itself, in my opinion, we're missing out opportunities. Off trail, when doing so mindfully, respectfully, and with a purpose, that's where the on track comes out from, right? Allows us to be so much more in tune with what we're looking for. Because if you're off trail and you don't know what you're looking for, you're going to be lost. And the opposite of that, whenever I go off trail, is actually to be found by ourselves. And that sounds all sort of philosophical. It actually applies to life. It's not just about the mountains. I think that too often I see some of my students come on my trip. I'll give you an example. One of my students last November, Afshin, he is a great photographer. He got great education, an MBA under his belt, traditional corporate path, really brilliant individual. And on the drive back from the mountains, we did a 3-day trip out in the Sierra. He was philosophizing. He was telling me what what sort of thoughts came to his mind. And he said, this whole, I didn't say any of this, right? So he actually articulated off trail on track better than me. He said, this whole off trail experience, it's so similar to what I'm going through right now, because I'm not really finding fulfillment from following the path, checking someone else's checklist, checking society's checklist. And what am I on track to? Yeah, more wealth. Yeah, more money. But what am I really on track to? That experience in the mountains allowed him to reflect on his personal life outside of the mountains, to say, okay, what am I actually going after? Is it more money? Is it fulfillment? Is it doing the things that we love? Is it building a family? What is it, right? So it sparked him to understand what he's on track to. And then from that realization, he then said, you know, I need to go off trail. Now there's conviction there.
Yeah.
This off trail is now his own trail, that he is owning his own path. Looking back, not negating all of the stuff that he's done, but seeing all the pieces that he's built, all the little paths that perhaps society, perhaps his family, perhaps his friends, perhaps himself built together. And then where do you take this really good group of ingredients? What kind of path, what kind of trail, what kind of goal are you building toward? And in that way, he's able to understand the kind of life path that he needs to not follow, but develop and discover. And now it's been, what, 6 months later, he's thriving. He's thriving off trail in his business. And he is trying to assemble projects that he is passionate about and that he's working on, leveraging his skill set from the past, his on-trail experience, to go off-trail, to go build a life that really gets him fulfillment. So I'm so pleased to see this, and this is one of many examples of some of my students who come on the trips. Again, I don't do any teaching, which is great. I create the space so that they can go learn and they can go discover. Because ultimately, without that sense of ownership of your own path, you're ultimately just following an on-trail experience, but just happens to be on trail, or off trail, right? So that integration is key. Is to allow yourself to be able to figure out your own off trail, and that's why this is a movement. It's not just about some kind of a wilderness experience. That is the start. That is an inspiration. That is a spark. How you take that concept of being off trail, being on track, being minimal, being understanding that the world is abundant, all of that can be then integrated into your own lives. And then you realize, actually, I have a lot to offer. And there's a lot in the world that can be offered to me. That's why this is, it's simultaneously a personal development and transformation movement, as well as a movement, hopefully, toward channeling more attention and resources for nature and for conservation, which is much needed. And so all of my trips and all of the courses that I do under Off Trail On Track, I've decided that, you know, I refused to take money in the past, but another incident inspired me to start charging. And then I said, okay, you know, I'm charging money, but you know, all of this, the profits, should be given to conservation projects, should be redistributed to places where I can promote inclusivity of different types of cultures, of what the world calls minority or different belief systems, right? So inclusivity of people of color, especially women, of the LGBTQ community, of places that are decimated or affected or afflicted by these forest fires. And then, so that's one core. And then the second one is education. So how do we enable skill sets for people to go into the wilderness and to do conservation work? And the third is obviously the conservation part. So if we can do all of that and allow people to have a sense of personal development and transformation while giving back to nature, wouldn't that be great? Wouldn't that be a way to generate fulfillment for all?
Yeah. And my feeling is that you can't do a whole lot for the way humanity relates to nature unless you do something for how humanity relates to itself.
Oh, lovely. Exactly. You can't have just one. You have to have both. And this goes back, I love the way you tie it back together. It's not just about the individual. It's not just about the collective. It's about the integration of the two, nature and self, and to allow that to be able to flourish both at the same time. People don't like that because it's not simple. It's a complex answer, and we love simplicity. We love a straight hero story, but I think the world is more agrarian than it's warrior based. So I see life as more of a cycle, more of seasons, and more of how we cultivate, as opposed to, there's a hero event, a warrior event, and we conquer. I personally believe in a much more sort of cyclical and more seasonal way of life.
Yeah, that's interesting, because both of those archetypes might be somewhat useful.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. I agree.
And yeah, so sometimes, we have life-defining moments, but we also have a cycle.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and most of life is so you take someone out in the wilderness and you open the door to personal discovery. That's what you hope to do. And you open that door, and that's what you did. You opened the door. So there's a path now towards personal discovery. It's a lengthy path. It's the one you walk for the rest of your life.
Right.
But you also have these moments. And so it's very interesting when, somebody opens the door to self-discovery, and they go on this journey, and there's, you got to the top of this hilltop and you see this, and you got over here and you see this. And I just recently went on a hike where I saw a rock that looked exactly like a face.
Yeah.
And I looked at that rock, with the shadows, and it didn't look like it had been worked by human hands.
Mm.
So that was, just an outward illustration. There's another little thing I saw there.
Yeah.
So it's always a continual path, but sometimes you get right to the core of yourself too.
Yes.
As an individual. And could you speak to that? Have you seen someone? Well, you did already speak to that. You saw somebody who really 6 months after they made the wilderness trip had made some pretty deep discoveries. So
yeah, absolutely.
Real. So not just opening the door, but they'd made some real specific learning discoveries.
Yes.
And,
I'll tell you another example. This was actually the event that triggered me to start charging a fee. Because for the last 7 years, or 6 of the 7 years, I refused payment until this one trip. This gentleman who celebrated his 64th birthday on my trip. And he's been a corporate executive, very successful one. And unfortunately, 9 months prior to his trip with me, he had a quadruple bypass heart surgery. So I said, all right, you got to be clear. I need to see the doctor's note. You're not coming on the trip unless I see the doctor's note. And I want to make sure that you're in good health to be able to come on. And surely enough, right? So he passed all the doctors cleared him, and he came on the trip. And the conditions, the weather conditions were projected to not to drop below freezing. And unfortunately, when we were deep in the wilderness, this was day 2. This was day 2 in the wilderness. We were off trail, at least 13, 14 miles out. And the weather suddenly changed. It turned from a pretty balmy, mid-50s temperature, pretty sunny, to suddenly it started hailing, and then it started snowing, and it started raining, and then it just cycled between the three. Just really gnarly conditions. And the group was a little spooked because it wasn't projected to do that. And in any of the forecasts that we've been monitoring, it wasn't going to do that. So, and so he started to exhibit symptoms that worried me. He started to lose his appetite. He was mumbling in his speech. He was not able to swallow a lot of water without trembling. And so long story short, and it was very difficult to start a fire because of all the rain and all that. So, but we managed to, applying our wilderness skill set, managed to find a way to start a fire. And that night, I nursed him back to full health by slowly feeding him sugar and tea, and eventually I was able to coax him into eating something, and then by morning he's eating a full meal, which is great. Then we hiked the next day about 8 to 9 miles out and found a shortcut. And when we almost got back to the cars, he just grabbed onto me from the back. And he started bawling. I mean, and it was a very touching moment. And he said, this was really, you saved my life, and this is a life-changing experience for me. And, Duncan, I know you refuse to take money from me, but, I've got my checkbook in the car. Can I just write you a check for $1,000? And I thought for a moment, I said, yeah, write that check and please donate it, because nature needs it more. And I mean it. And I still mean it. And that's what inspired me, and I later asked him, why did you decide to donate $1,000? He said, well, $1,000 is not a lot of money to me. He's a pretty wealthy guy by financial means. But he realized that, on that trip, when you're facing the elements, when you're out there, what really mattered wasn't how much money there was in my bank account. It was us, it was people, and it was nature, and it was how resourceful we are.
Yeah.
And in figuring out the life and death situation there. Mm-hmm. And then what I realized, to your question, how did they make changes to their personal lives? Well, from that trip on, he told me, he's a very private person, but he told me, every 3 months, I just donate a chunk of money to worthy causes on his own. And, he's not donating to my organization. That's fine. That's totally fine. But the fact that he is donating to conservation, to the wilderness, to the place that we hiked, and to support trail maintenance work, to support very underfunded national forest areas, that to me and he's a retired guy now, and that to me just made me feel really, really good, because his realization triggered something in him that allowed him to give, that allowed him to realize what fulfillment was. And by giving was actually an act of fulfillment to himself. And that was a really great life lesson that I've learned. And so I took that, I reflected on it, I meditated on it, and I said, okay, I'm going to start charging money, and I'm going to donate the profits. Yeah. And that's what sparked this. So
no, you're doing another thing, I think, that should really speak to people, because it's something that happened to me recently too, a realization. But yeah. I understand that you're working a full-time job. Is that true?
Well, I used to be working a corporate job. Now I do the same work, but I cap my hours, and I consult for executives of tech companies here in the Bay Area. Yeah. So I cap my hours. I said, this is how I make money. But guiding and teaching and doing off-trail on-track work, that's how I make fulfillment. So that's my arrangement now.
I think that's a fantastic message to our listeners. I really do, because, I'm getting a little bit older here. And so I think everybody probably has some moments where they just think, I'll never be able to do what I want to do until I'm retired. Mm-hmm. But we have to do those things now.
Yeah.
And we can do more than we think we can do. You can still, okay, so here is where your message really applies, taking action now, because you're saying, let's get rid of the things we don't really need.
Right.
So then let's do that. Let's really focus on the things that are really important to us in life. Yeah. Then there will be enough time for them. Because now we're not doing the unnecessary stuff where we idled away time, and we kind of like to do them, but they're not as important as the main thing.
Yeah.
So that's the idea behind the Gossamer Gear saying, motto, is, what is it? Take less, do more.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. That's strongly resonant with me.
And again, that's something that Dr. Feldenkrais would have talked about. He talked about, you can force your way through something, or you can remove the obstacles. You can remove the internal resistance. Yeah. He called that conflicted motivations. Mm-hmm. Or physically, you can learn how to move more efficiently, more easily. So that, not so that everything's easy, because life will never always be easy, but so that you can do more of what you want.
Yeah.
You can express more of what you want. And So that's a big lesson to our listeners. Do it now.
You know,
Yeah.
yes. And that makes me think of one of the things that my mentor, my former boss, Ted Crozier, he taught me this. He said, you know, there are things, this was back when I was a management consultant and I was really stressed out, and you know, there's a million emails and there's like so many things that I need to respond to, and uh, and he said, never confuse what's important from what's urgent. Um, Urgent things can often occupy the mind, more so than important things. But focus on the things that are important,
Yeah.
the urgency will go away,
Yeah.
because now you're working on what is actually important. And to your point about do it now, yeah, there's an urgency to it, but do the right thing now. Not just do everything right now. It's do the important thing now, not the urgent thing now. And it's very illustrative example was I that morning when he taught me this, Ted taught me this. I was sitting next to him, and I opened my computer and I saw my inbox, hundreds of emails. Oh my goodness, it's just hundreds of emails that are unread and I need to respond to. And I just held my head. I said, Ted, I can't do this. This is too much. And he said, come over here. I'll show you something. And I went over, and he said, watch. And he showed me his inbox, right? His email inbox. And he pressed Control A, and then he pressed delete. I said, but.
Yeah.
And he said, you know, I do this every morning. It feels really good. And I said, but what about all the emails? And he said, well, if it's important enough, they'll call me. I love that philosophy, and I love that. And I said, you're right. Obviously, I don't practice that today, but you know, because I'm perhaps less secure than he feels.
Yeah.
I still read my emails, although I do a poor job at it. But that taught me an important lesson. It's what's important and what's urgent. And yes, there's a lot of information, but not all of it is important. In fact, very few things are important. Focus on what's important, and the urgency will go away.
Yeah. So we've covered so much today.
Indeed.
So much. How can people help you with your movement?
Oh, I don't think about that. I think about how I can help people with their movement.
Yeah, but now let's look at it the other way.
Yeah. Oh, it's challenging to think about that. You know, how can people help me? In fact, that's one of my greatest insecurities. I'll tell you that is that I've explored this for so many years. Like, why do I feel the need to be self-sufficient and refuse help? But you know, now I think I'm beginning to coming to terms with it. To say, you know, it's actually okay to receive, to also think about what I need to continue to build this movement.
Yeah, I think it's an important question. Yeah.
Right. And so I think what I would love to do is to continue to go hiking with people who are open to personal development and transformation. I think that's a core ingredient in all of this. It's not just about going out there to beautiful places and snapping a photo for your Instagram. That's checking somebody else's list. That's not really. I mean, for some people that might be what brings them fulfillment. But I think there's a common thread here where we can actually find more and give more by looking deeper inside of what we actually need. Is it other people's approval? And oftentimes when we dig deeper, it actually isn't. It's actually a sense of fear that is driven that kind of behavior. So when you say, okay, how can people help with the movement, and how can I also contribute to it? I think you can start with taking an inventory of what we need in life, and maybe come backpacking with me and we can talk about it. We can come talk about what is it that you're looking for? What is one aspect of your life that you most urgently need more fulfillment from? And that is such a great question for me, because by thinking about it, by examining it, but with myself and also with other people and with nature, it always brings up different things, because different things pop up in my head. And I invite your listeners and everyone to think about that question. Is it, I know we got to pay bills. We got rent to pay. We got, kids to take care of. We got mouths to feed. I understand that. We can't forget that. That's really important.
Yeah.
At the same time, what is it that is going to jolt us out of our cycle of tactical behavior, the tactical actions that we do, and start thinking more strategically about our lives, thinking more about what we want in the long run and how can we make parts of it realize today. And it could be very simple things. It could be, well, I always wanted to exercise more, but I never have time for it because I got 2 jobs, I got a kid at home, I got to handle the house, all of that. But without health, this is what my father taught me, without your health, without your both physical and mental health, you can't do anything.
No.
There's no way to tackle any of that. And so it's a matter of reprioritizing and really internalizing that priority. I still struggle with that. I'm not going to lie. I still struggle with that. I don't have time for yoga today. That's BS. I got to tell myself, no, the mindset should be flipped around. And I tried this and it worked really well for me, which is, no, I don't have time for work unless I take care of myself through yoga, through meditation, through hiking. Once I do that, then I will have the mental tokens and the physical tokens, these life chips, right, to go and assign to what else I need to do. And by flipping that priority to prioritize mental health, physical health, emotional health, all of that, that enables us to be richer, to have more resources. It's hard to believe until we try it, until we stick to it, until we do it more than a week. But that's the first step that I would ask our listeners to do. It's to take an inventory of what really brings you fulfillment in life, and then try to prioritize that just for 2 weeks. Let's see what happens. Yeah. And then maybe come on one of these hikes with us where we actually get to explore deeper what that means. I've got enough gear here to supply 20 people on at any given time.
That's an amazing bat cave.
Yeah, thank you. That's what my son calls this place, the bat cave.
Oh, is it? Yeah.
Yeah. And if you don't have gear, I will lend it to you. And thanks to Gossamer Gear and Lighten Equipment and Tokes Cookware, I'm able to guide a lot of these trips. And this is not an accumulation of stuff. It's an accumulation of potential experiences that others can have. Wow. And that is what enables these trips. If you don't have the ultralight equipment, it's okay. I give it to you. And you can lend it from my library. If you don't know where to go, it's okay. I can show you. I can take you where on your first trips. If you don't have the skill set, it's okay. I can teach you. And we can teach each other. So no excuses, people. Let's go hiking.
Yeah, let's go hiking. That's a good way to end this segment. Yeah. Is there? How do people get in touch with you?
Sure. Come on my website, offtrailontrack.com. And I'm in a very painful process to get my organization to certify as a 501c3 nonprofit. I'm still working my way through it. It's not easy, as some of you might know. So come on my website. We can have a conversation. Contact me. I have my contact info on there. You can just email Duncan at offtrailontrack.com. Find me on any of the social media platforms. I don't use it as a way to indulge myself in social media. I use it as a way to connect as a starting point so that we can have a face-to-face conversation, hopefully in the mountains. So that's how people can find me. And I would love to hike with people who are ready, who are open and who are ready to examine what they are looking for in life.
All right. Well, that's great. So go to offtrailontrack.com.
That's right.
Right.
Thank you. Yeah.
Duncan, I so much appreciate you being on this show.
Likewise, Scott, it's been a privilege to speak with you always, whether it's privately or on an open channel. And I'd love to go hiking with you because I have so much to learn from you. I have so much.
We'll have to arrange it. Because you're right. We are a kindred spirit on that, I think.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So, okay, wonderful.
I'll see you in the mountains.
We'll do it.
Wonderful.
Okay, so I'm going to sign off of Facebook here.
Okay.
And then we'll say goodbye to everybody. And right now I'll stop the recording and then we'll end the meeting.
All right.